Hi there, I'm Wendy and welcome to my channel where I share knitting and crochet tutorial videos for my projects and techniques. And in today's video, I'm going to show you how to cast on for your knitting using the cable cast on method. Now, this is a basic cast on method that uses 2 knitting needles, and the other basic method is called the long tail cast on, and that uses 1 knitting needle. So it's just a case of preference as to which method you prefer. So I'll put a link in the description notes below and above here now so that you can take a look at that one as well and see which one you prefer to use. So just before we start, if you're new to my channel, don't forget to subscribe and then you'll get notifications of when my next videos go live. And if you've enjoyed this video, it would be lovely if you gave me a thumbs up as well. But for now, we'll get going and we'll start casting on for our knitting. So to make a start, the first thing that I'm going to do is to make a slip knot, and I want to make my slip knot about 4 to 6 inches away from the end of my yarn. So if you're working in centimetres, that's about 10 to 15 centimetres. So to do this, I'm going to have my palm upwards and I'm going to lay the yarn across my hand with the end of the yarn coming towards the edge of my little fingers. And I'm going to hold that yarn in place with my thumb and my forefinger. Then I'm going to wrap that yarn around my first 2 fingers, and I'm going to wrap it around a second time, just slightly lower down, and then bring it around and hold that in place with my thumb and my forefinger. So then I'm going to take my knitting needle and I'm going to take it underneath the top loop and over the bottom loop, and then scoop it through and pull, and I'm going to just gently hold the ends, and that will give me a flexible loop. Now a slip knot is just a flexible loop, and this is what you need to make the first stitch for your cast on edge. So once you've got your slip knot, you can just pop that on your needle and just tighten it up. And I use the phrase snug it up, but basically what I'm saying is you just want to have that stitch on your needle comfortably. You don't want it really tight so that it's scraping as it's coming up and down the needle, and you don't want it so loose that it's falling off. So you just want that comfortably sitting on the needle like that. So now I've got this slip knot on my left hand knitting needle, I'm going to make sure that the slip knot is fairly near the tip, and then I'm going to bring along my other needle and I'm going to hold them with the tips pointing away from me. And I'm going to draw back that right hand needle and I'm going to slide it through the stitch from back to front, and that will create a cross with my knitting needles. So now I'm going to support all of that with my left hand, and then with my right hand I'm going to hold the yarn that's leading to the ball of wool. So now I'm holding that yarn, I'm going to take it underneath the bottom needle and I'm going clockwise from right to left. So it's going underneath the bottom needle, up and over and back down again. So now I can hold my knitting needles with both hands, and I'm going to take my forefinger of my left hand and just hold it on the tip of that bottom needle. And now I can draw the top needle over to the top of the tip of the bottom needle and roll the needle over the top. And if I just separate the needles slightly, you'll see I've now got 2 stitches. I've got 1 stitch on each needle. So now I can draw back my left hand needle, and I want to go into the right hand needle from behind and come to the front. Now I can draw back my right hand needle and I've got 2 stitches on my knitting needle. So that's now the hardest part of this method done. So now I've got 2 stitches on my left hand needle, and the method that we're going to use now is going to be exactly the same method for however many stitches you're going to cast on. So you'll find this creates a little bit of a rhythm. So what I'm going to do is take my right hand needle between the first and the second stitch, and I'm going to go completely through from one side to the other between the first and the second stitch, so you can see it here. Then I'm going to take my yarn that's leading to the ball of wool. I'm going to take it clockwise underneath the bottom needle, up and over and back down again. And I can now hold the yarn and the needle in my right hand. And then I'm going to roll that left hand needle up towards the tip. I tend to put my forefinger on the top of the bottom needle, and I just roll that left hand needle over, and it pulls a stitch through. Then I put my knitting needles together, a bit like a knife and fork. I draw the left needle back, and I go through the back of the stitch on the right hand needle and come out the front, and then I just slide the stitch off my right hand needle. So now we have 3 stitches. So I'm going to do that again. I'm going to take my right hand needle. I'm going to go directly through, all the way through between the first and the second stitch on the needle. So I go all the way through. That forms a cross, and that will start to feel quite secure now. You can actually let go and it feels quite firm and in place. So I'm going to take my yarn and I'm going to take it underneath from right to left, clockwise, up and over that bottom right hand needle. I can now hold my right hand needle with the yarn and the thread together, and I can start rolling that left hand needle up towards the tip. I'm going to pop my forefinger on top of the tip of the lower needle to stop my stitch flicking off, and I'm going to roll the needle over the top of the stitch, and that's pulled through my next stitch. So I now point my knitting needles away from me. I draw back the left hand needle and I go in through the back of the stitch on the right hand needle and out through the front. And then I can draw back the right needle, and I've now got 4 stitches on my knitting needle. Now, when you look at the first stitch, it will always look as if it's in slightly a different direction. Can you see? And you might think that you've gone wrong when you haven't. So we're now going to continue and make another one. So I'm going to go in between the first and the second stitch on my needle. I've taken my needle through and it's underneath. Again, it feels quite secure now, forming this cross. I can take my yarn and I'm going to come up and over clockwise that bottom needle. And now I can hold the needle and the yarn all in my right hand. I can now start sliding that needle up towards the tip of the lower needle, and I'm going to put my forefinger on the tip of the lower needle so that I can roll that needle over and pull out my next stitch, having the tips of my needles facing away from me, and then I can draw back that left hand needle and go through the back of the stitch on the right hand needle and come out the front. Then I can slide the stitch off the right hand needle. So I'm going to do that once more. I'm going to take the right hand needle between the first and second stitch, and I've got my left hand needle on the top and my right hand needle on the bottom, forming a cross. I can then take my yarn clockwise up and over that bottom needle, hold the needle, and then pop my forefinger on top of that lower needle and just draw that needle back over, roll it over the tip of the bottom needle, point my knitting needles away, draw the left hand needle back and go through the back and come out the front of the stitch on the right hand needle, and then draw that right hand needle back. So I'm going to do that once more. I'm going to take the knitting needle and I'm going to go through between the first and the second stitch. Take my yarn clockwise underneath, up and over that right hand needle. I can now hold the needle and the yarn together in my right hand, and I can now start sliding my top needle, my left hand needle with all the stitches. I can start sliding that towards the tip of the right hand needle, and I'm going to roll it over the top and pull out my next stitch, point my needles away from me. Now I can draw back the left hand needle and go through the back to the front of my new stitch and slide it off the right hand needle. So these are the steps that you'll need to repeat if you're using the cable cast on method for starting off your knitting. As I said to you at the beginning of the video, the other basic version of casting on is called the long tail cast on, and with that method you just use one knitting needle, and it's just a case of preference as to which one you prefer to use. But in the description notes below I'll put my link for the long tail cast on so you can take a look at that. And in my beginner's basic videos, I've also got a video on how to do the knit stitch, how to do the purl stitch, how to cast off, and how to increase and decrease. But for now, I'll just say thanks for watching. I really hope you enjoy your knitting, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye!